Ava Brooks sat alone in her small apartment, the lights dim and quiet. It was her 28th birthday, but there were no friends around, no party, no laughter. In front of her sat a single cupcake with a tiny candle stuck in the middle. She had bought it for herself that morning, just so the day wouldn't pass without something sweet. Her phone buzzed on the table. When she saw the name Mom on the screen, her heart lifted a little. Maybe her mother had finally remembered. Maybe this year would be different. Ava smiled faintly and answered. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. But instead of happy birthday, her mother's sharp voice came through the phone. "Ava, don't expect me to celebrate someone who keeps wasting her life." Ava froze, the small smile fading from her lips. "Mom, she began, but Patricia kept talking. "When I was your age, I already had a family, a good job, and a plan. You can't even keep a job for more than a few months. You're always chasing silly dreams." Ava swallowed hard. "Mom, I'm not wasting my life. I'm working on my restaurant idea. It just needs a little more time." Her mother cut her off quickly. "Cooking and dreaming don't pay the bills, Ava. I didn't raise you to be like this. We don't celebrate failures in this family." The words hit like knives. Ava didn't say another word. She ended the call quietly and placed the phone down. For a moment, she just sat there, staring at the cupcake through her tears. She tried to smile, but her chest ached. All she had wanted was to hear, "I'm proud of you." Just once. Instead, her birthday gift was disappointment. Slowly, she lit the candle and watched the tiny flame dance. The room was silent except for her shaky breathing. She whispered almost to herself, "One day, you'll regret those words, Mom." Then she blew out the candle. Not to make a wish, but to make a promise. Ava Brooks grew up with her mother, Patricia, who worked as a nurse. Her father had left when she was only 5, and from that moment, it was just the two of them. Patricia worked long hours at the hospital and came home tired, but even then, she always demanded the best from Ava. "AB is a failure," Patricia would often say. "You have to be the best in everything you do." Ava tried her best to please her mother. She studied hard, kept her room spotless, and never talked back. But no matter what she did, Patricia always found something that wasn't good enough. When Ava was 12, she began to cook dinner before her mother came home. It started as a small thing. She didn't want her mother to eat cold food after long shifts. But soon, cooking became Ava's little world, a place where she could relax and feel proud of herself. She loved mixing flavors, trying new recipes, and watching people enjoy her food. One evening, Patricia came home to the smell of homemade stew. Ava stood proudly by the stove, waiting for her reaction. Patricia tasted it and said, "It's nice, but cooking won't pay the bills, Ava. Focus on your studies." Ava's smile faded. She stopped talking about food after that, even though she still cooked every chance she got. Years later, Ava went to college and studied business, just like her mother wanted. She graduated with good grades and got a job at a corporate office. But sitting behind a computer all day made her feel empty. She wanted to create, to feed people, to make something with her hands. After a few years of pretending to be happy, Ava finally quit her job. She used her savings to start a small food business that sold homemade fusion meals, recipes she had been developing for years. When she told her mother, Patricia was furious. "I didn't sacrifice my life for you to play with pots and pans," she shouted. "You're throwing away your future." But Ava didn't see it that way. For the first time in her life, she felt alive. She started small, working at a local food truck, learning how to run a kitchen, and saving every penny she could. Ava had 2 close friends who believed in her. Riley, her coworker at the truck, and Maya, a food critic and blogger who loved her recipes. Riley was cheerful and always encouraged her to keep going, even on hard days. Maya helped her post pictures and short cooking videos online to attract customers. Even with their support, Ava still battled her mother's voice in her head. Every time something went wrong, when sales were low, or when a customer complained, she could almost hear Patricia saying, "See? I told you this wouldn't work." Still, Ava refused to give up. She worked long hours, trying new recipes and saving money for her dream restaurant. Cooking made her feel whole. It reminded her that she wasn't a failure, just someone who wanted to live differently. Sometimes at night, she would scroll through her mother's old messages, reading them over and over. There was love hidden beneath Patricia's harsh words. But it was a love wrapped in fear, fear that Eva would struggle the way she once did. Eva wished her mother could see what she saw, that happiness didn't come from perfection or money, but from doing what made her heart feel full. And even though Patricia still refused to accept her choices, Eva promised herself one thing. She would keep going until her mother saw that chasing a dream wasn't a sign of failure, but courage. Eva finally opened her small restaurant and named it Savor Street. It was the happiest day of her life. After years of saving, planning, and fighting through doubts, her dream had finally come true. The restaurant was small but beautiful, warm lights, wooden tables, and the smell of freshly cooked meals filled the air. Friends and neighbors came to celebrate her grand opening. Riley hugged her tightly, grinning from ear to ear. "You did it, Eva. You really did it." Maya took pictures, posting them online with the caption, "A dream served on a plate, Savor Street is open." Eva laughed and thanked everyone who came. Her heart felt full. She had worked so hard for this moment. But deep down, a small ache remained. Her mother, Patricia, hadn't shown up. Eva had sent her an invitation, hoping maybe this time she would come. But Patricia had only replied with a short message, "I don't have time to watch you make another mistake." Still, Eva tried not to let it ruin her joy. That night she served her favorite dishes, spicy shrimp pasta, creamy soup, and a special dessert she called Sweet Victory. Customers clapped, took pictures, and told her the food was amazing. As the night ended, Eva stood by the door, thanking each guest. When the last person left, she looked around the quiet restaurant and smiled. It wasn't just a restaurant. It was proof that she had built something real, all by herself. She stayed late, cleaning up with Riley. They joked and talked about the future, maybe expanding someday, maybe even getting a mention in a food magazine. Around midnight, Riley waved goodbye. Eva stayed a little longer, locking up and turning off the lights. Outside, the street was peaceful. Eva stood for a moment, staring at the restaurant sign glowing softly in the dark. Savor Street, her dream, shining like a promise. But just a few hours later, everything changed. At around 3 a.m., a small electrical spark started in the kitchen. It caught onto a curtain, then spread to the counter. Within minutes, smoke filled the room. The fire alarm blared, but no one was there to stop it. By the time firefighters arrived, flames had already eaten through the roof. Eva woke to a call from the fire department. She rushed to the scene barefoot, wearing only her hoodie and jeans. The smell of smoke hit her before she even saw it. Her restaurant, her heart, was burning to ashes. She stood on the street, trembling as firefighters tried to control the blaze. The heat was strong, the sky glowing orange. Riley ran up beside her, holding her tightly, but Eva couldn't move. She couldn't cry. She just stared. When the fire finally died down, only blackened wood and melted metal remained. The sign Savor Street lay broken on the ground. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. A message from her mother. "I told you. This is what happens when you chase dreams instead of stability." That was the moment Eva broke. The tears came all at once. Heavy, painful, unstoppable. She fell to her knees shaking. All the late nights, all the sacrifices, all the love she had poured into her dream, gone in one night. Riley tried to comfort her, but Eva barely heard her voice. Everything around her felt distant, like a bad dream she couldn't wake from. When morning came, the firefighters left, and the street went quiet again. Eva sat on the sidewalk, staring at the ashes. She had nothing left. No home, no money, no restaurant. But as the first light of dawn touched the ruins, something inside her shifted. The pain was deep, but beneath it, a small fire began to burn again. Not in the kitchen this time, but in her heart. She wiped her tears, stood up slowly, and whispered to herself, "Never again." It wasn't just a promise. It was a vow that she would rise, no matter how hard it got. Eva moved in with Riley after the fire. She had nowhere else to go. All her savings, her equipment, even her favorite cooking utensils were gone. Riley's small apartment became her new home. A couch, a blanket, and a corner for her few clothes. It wasn't much, but it was safe. At first, Eva barely spoke. She spent her days staring out the window, thinking about everything she had lost. Riley tried to cheer her up with jokes and warm meals, but Eva could hardly smile. Cooking, the thing that once brought her joy, now reminded her of pain and failure. After a few weeks, When her money began to run out, Eva started taking small catering jobs. Some were birthday parties, others small office events. It wasn't steady, but it kept her busy. At night, she and Riley would sit in the tiny kitchen, trying to make meals out of whatever was left in the fridge, a few vegetables, some rice, or leftover bread. One night, Maya visited them. She was carrying her phone and tripod. "Eva," she said, "why don't we record you cooking again? People loved your food before. You can start small, just short videos. Let's show the real side of your story." Eva hesitated. Who wants to watch someone who failed? Maya smiled gently. Everyone fails, Eva. Not everyone is brave enough to talk about it. That night, they filmed their first video. Eva cooked a simple meal, a vegetable stew, while talking about losing everything. Her eyes were red, her hands trembled, but she spoke honestly. She said, "Sometimes life burns everything you've built, but maybe it's because you're meant to start again, stronger." Maya posted the video online. Neither of them expected what happened next. By morning, the video had thousands of views. People from everywhere commented saying things like, "I needed this today," and "You made me cry, but in a good way." Others shared their own stories of failure and starting over. Eva couldn't believe it. Her pain had touched strangers. They made more videos, sometimes with laughter, sometimes with tears. Eva cooked from leftovers, showing how to make something beautiful out of very little. She didn't hide her emotions. When she cried, she cried. When she smiled, it was real. People loved her honesty. Soon, everyone started calling her the Broken Chef. At first, Eva wasn't sure how to feel about the name. But then she realized broken didn't mean weak. It meant she had survived. Her followers grew quickly. Some days, her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She received messages from people thanking her for giving them hope. A single mother wrote, "You made me believe I can try again." A man said, "Your food helped me through depression." For the first time since the fire, Eva felt purpose again. But not everyone knew her secret. Across town, Patricia's co-workers were talking in the hospital cafeteria. "Have you seen that woman online? The Broken Chef?" One nurse said. "She talks about failure like poetry. Her story is powerful." Patricia listened quietly, pretending she didn't care. But later, when she looked up the videos on her phone, her heart stopped. It was Eva, her daughter, cooking with messy hair, swollen eyes, and raw emotion, and the world loved her for it. She quickly locked her phone and told no one. She didn't understand how people could admire failure. Still, she watched every video in secret. Meanwhile, Eva's life slowly started to change. A local event manager invited her to cook for a charity dinner. The guests loved her dishes. Then came more calls, weddings, pop-up food stalls, and even small cooking classes. Riley cheered her on, and Maya handled her online accounts. It felt like a team, like family. One afternoon, Eva received an email from a man named Mr. Delgado, a restaurant investor. He wrote, "I've been following your journey. Your food speaks to the heart. Let's meet." Eva was nervous when they met at a cafe. Mr. Delgado was kind and soft-spoken. He said, "Your story has something money can't buy, truth. I want to help you open a new restaurant, something that represents hope." Eva's hands shook as she listened. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately. Another part whispered her mother's voice, "You'll fail again." That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Riley was asleep, the room quiet. Eva thought about everything. The fire, the tears, the people who believed in her, and those who didn't. She remembered her mother's harsh words, but also her own promise, never again. She realized that she wasn't doing this to prove Patricia wrong anymore. She was doing it for herself. The girl who once cooked dinner at 12. The woman who refused to stay broken. The next morning, she called Mr. Delgado and said softly, "Let's do it." As she hung up, she looked out the window at the rising sun. For the first time in a long while, she felt peace. Eva didn't know what the future would bring, but she knew one thing for sure. She had lost everything once and survived. She could do it again, and this time, she would build something that no fire, no words, and no fear could ever destroy. Eva's new restaurant, Haven Kitchen, opened quietly on a cool Friday evening. There was no big party, no loud music, just the smell of warm food, soft lights, and laughter from the few guests who filled the cozy space. Every dish on the menu had a story. There was the hope risotto, made from the same recipe she cooked on her hardest days, and rebuild soup, which she created during her time living with Riley. People loved the atmosphere. The restaurant wasn't fancy, but it felt like home. Customers often said, "This place feels safe, like it understands you." And that was exactly what Ava wanted, a place where people could eat, heal, and feel seen. One evening, while Ava was busy checking on the kitchen, a TV crew suddenly walked in. They introduced themselves as part of a popular food show called Taste of Tomorrow. They had heard about Ava, the broken chef, and wanted to feature her restaurant on their show. Ava was shocked. She hadn't expected anything like this. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. The host smiled. "You're an inspiration, Ava. People love how real you are. We want the world to know your story." Ava agreed, still trying to hold back tears. The crew filmed her cooking, talking about her journey from losing everything to starting again. When they finished, the crowd in the restaurant clapped and cheered for her. Ava stood there, smiling and grateful, her heart full. The next evening, things were quieter. The staff prepared for another regular night when the hostess approached Ava with a note. "There's a woman at table 9, she said. She asked for you personally." Ava looked at the note. The name didn't sound familiar. She wiped her hands and walked out to the dining area. When she reached table 9, her steps slowed. Sitting there was her mother, Patricia. She looked older than Ava remembered, her face tired, eyes glossy, but her posture still firm and proud. Ava froze, unsure what to say. "Mom," she whispered. Patricia looked up slowly. "I wanted to see what failure tastes like," she said quietly, her voice trembling though she tried to sound strong. Ava's heart ached, but she nodded gently. "All right," she said. "Then I'll make you something special." She went back to the kitchen and stood still for a moment. Her hands shook as she picked up the ingredients. Then she began to cook the Sunday stew, the same dish she used to make as a child when her mother worked late at the hospital. It was simple: beef, potatoes, carrots, and a touch of rosemary, but it was filled with love and memory. When she served the dish, Patricia didn't speak at first. She took a small spoonful and tasted it. For a long moment, she didn't look up. Then slowly, tears started to roll down her cheeks. Ava stood quietly, unsure if she should say anything. Finally, Patricia whispered, "You used to make this when I came home tired. I remember the smell. I remember your smile." Her voice broke. "I wasn't kind to you, Ava. I thought if I was tough, you wouldn't end up struggling like me. I didn't want you to feel hunger, or pain, or disappointment. I thought I was protecting you." Ava's throat tightened. "You didn't protect me, Mom," she said softly. "You broke me. Every time you called me a failure, I believed it. Every time you compared me to others, I felt smaller. But I learned to fix myself." The restaurant was silent. Even the waiters pretended to be busy, giving them space. Patricia wiped her tears and looked at her daughter. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "And you did." Ava's eyes filled with tears. She pulled out a chair and sat beside her mother. For a while, they didn't speak. They just sat together, letting the silence heal what words couldn't. When Patricia finished the stew, she looked around the restaurant, the people laughing and eating. "You built this," she said softly. "You really did." Ava nodded, her voice low. "Yes, Mom. I did. And I did it my way." For the first time in years, Patricia smiled. A real smile, not the proud or judging one Ava had grown used to. As Ava walked her mother out that night, the air felt different, lighter. The wound between them wasn't gone, but it had started to close. Inside Haven Kitchen, the lights glowed softly, and the scent of stew still lingered, warm, familiar, and full of peace. Patricia started visiting the restaurant often, not to criticize, not to lecture, but just to watch Ava work. She usually sat at the corner table near the window, quietly sipping tea while Ava moved around the kitchen with calm confidence. At first, their conversations were short and polite. Patricia would ask, "How's business?" And Ava would answer, "It's going well, Mom." That was it. But slowly, little by little, the space between them began to feel softer. Sometimes Patricia would help fold napkins or talk with the customers. Other times, she simply watched, eyes full of quiet pride that she didn't know how to put into words. Ava noticed it, but she didn't push. She was learning that healing took time, and that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant letting go of the pain that once controlled her. One afternoon, Ava was invited to a live TV interview about her journey. Sitting under the bright lights, she felt both nervous and grateful. The host smiled at her and asked, "Ava, what would you say to people who feel like failures?" Ava took a deep breath and said softly, "I used to think failure was the end, but it was just the start of the version of me I was meant to be. Losing everything made me find myself again. Sometimes, the pieces that fall apart are the ones that teach us how to build better." The audience clapped. Patricia, watching from home, wiped her eyes. For the first time, she saw her daughter not as the little girl she tried to control, but as a strong woman who had turned pain into purpose. Weeks later, Ava decided to start something new, a mentorship program for young women who had been told they weren't good enough. She called it Second Chance Kitchen. There, she taught them cooking skills, confidence, and how to rise after failure. The program quickly grew, and many women came, each with her own story. Some had lost jobs, others had faced rejection or judgment, but all of them found comfort in Ava's kitchen. One morning, as Ava was setting up for a class, she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Need an extra pair of hands?" She turned around. It was Patricia, holding a bag of fresh vegetables. Ava blinked in surprise, then smiled. "Sure," she said quietly. "You can help with the chopping." Patricia joined her at the counter. They worked side by side in silence at first, the sound of the knife against the board filling the room. Then Patricia said, "You're doing something good here, Ava. I'm proud of you." Ava paused for a moment, her heart swelling. "Thanks, Mom," she said softly. They didn't hug. They didn't need to. The quiet between them said enough. From that day on, Patricia came often, helping, learning, and even laughing. The kitchen became their bridge, the place where the past no longer had power and love could exist without fear. Ava realized something important. Healing didn't need permission. It didn't need big words or perfect apologies. Sometimes, it was simply two people standing in the same kitchen, cooking together again, not as a demand for forgiveness, but as a sign that it had already begun. A year later, Ava's restaurant was full of life and laughter. Haven Kitchen had become a place people loved, warm, welcoming, and full of delicious food. Ava moved through the kitchen with confidence, smiling as she checked on her staff and greeted customers. It was her birthday again. This time she didn't sit alone. The staff had a surprise. They brought out a small cake with a single candle. Ava's heart skipped a beat when she saw who was standing beside it. Her mother, Patricia, was there. She smiled gently, not the sharp, critical look Ava remembered, but soft and kind. She held the candle and said softly, "Happy birthday, Ava. We celebrate everything now, especially the failures." Ava felt tears fill her eyes. She smiled through them, her heart full. She looked around at the restaurant, the people, the warmth, the life she had built, and knew she had finally made it. Not for anyone else, but for herself. She thought back on all the pain, all the nights she had cried, all the times she had felt broken. And she realized something important. The people who hurt her might never apologize the way she once wanted. But she had learned to rise above that. Sometimes, silence teaches you more than words ever could. Ava leaned forward, and her mother hugged her. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't like the hug she had wanted as a child, but it was real, peaceful, healing. For the first time in a long time, Ava felt completely at home. Not just in the restaurant, but in her life, in herself, and in her relationship with her mother. The candle flickered, the cake waited, and Ava closed her eyes, smiling. This time, she didn't just celebrate a birthday. She celebrated her strength, her courage, and the journey that had brought her here. Hey friends, thanks for sticking around till the end. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. See you next time.